doing a movie review, of course, of the 1991 film Dying Young. This film starred Julia Roberts, Campbell Scott, Vincent D'Onofrio, Colleen Dewhurst, David Selby, and George Martin. It was directed by Joel Schumacher with a score by James Newton Howard. Cinematography was by Juan Ruick Anchia. Screenplay was by Richard Friedenberg and edited by Robert Brown. Produced by Sally Field, yes, the Sally Field, the actress you're thinking of, and Kevin McCormick. So the basic plot for this movie is there's this guy, and he has leukemia. So he puts an ad in a newspaper advertising for a young, attractive woman to come and basically care for him through his chemo. And that young, attractive woman is the beautiful Julia Roberts. And, of course, she comes, and it's their journey through his illness and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to dive right into performances, as we normally do here on Movie Reviews with Margie. Julia Roberts. Great job. Really great job. Especially considering how young this was in her career. I mean, she'd just come off of doing Pretty Woman from 1990. Obviously, this was 91, but yeah, she did some really beautiful work in this film. The role was not that super, and neither was the dialogue, but all of her emotional scenes were believable. All of her crying scenes were believable, and I thought she did a super, super job. Moving on to Campbell Scott, it could have been worse. I don't know. I hesitate to say anything because a lot of his dialogue wasn't that super. He was really, really wooden in this performance. And I thought he did an absolutely fantastic job on, like, the illness, cancer, sickness kind of part of the acting. Unfortunately, the movie is not mostly about that, which is not what I was expecting at all. I'll get into that later, but the movie is not about that at all, so it's like, essentially, it's a love story between Campbell and Julia's characters. And he didn't really come through for me. Again, there was like one scene where I was like, wow, yeah, you're really turning it on. It was a crying scene. He had a really good crying scene, but also, though, during that crying scene, like, let's say that you're Julia and I'm him, which this is kind of weird, but anyway, you're supposed to be like he's supposed to be looking at her when he's crying and all this, like, oh, I love you and all this, and he's like, oh, I'm like, hey, she's over here, why? That was kind of strange, but anyway, yeah, I don't know, it fell kind of flat for me. It did. I've seen him do some pretty decent work, so I don't know. Chemistry, I felt like it was okay. I felt like Julia did everything she could have done. I felt like she probably had better chemistry with him than he did with her. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he just didn't really connect emotionally or something. Like, he was just kind of saying the lines. A lot of them were lackluster and, hey, yada, 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 just like monotone, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not saying he did a terrible job, but man, so many people that could have done it better as far as the romance part. Now, again, the sickness part he was great in, but the romance he was not, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, I don't have enough fingers to count the great people that could have had great chemistry with Julia Roberts and, gone for this and made it epic. And of course, I'm sure the first thing that's popping into several people's minds is Richard Gere. No, I don't think Richard Gere would have been right for this role. First of all, he is older than her, and it's supposed to be like two young people in love is the kind of the theme. And I don't think he would have been that super in the sickness stuff because he doesn't really look like sickly, and I don't know. I just, no. So I would not have put Richard Gere in this role, and the only reason I'm even talking about that is because I'm sure, like, the first thing some people were just going to say, well, Richard Gere would have crushed it. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so, yeah, I felt like that was kind of a poor casting choice for the romance section. And since the movie was basically romance, which, again, I was not expecting. If the movie had been, like, almost all sickness, he would have been good. But because it was mostly romance, it was not. He didn't really deliver on that for me. So, yeah, kind of weak there. Vincent P. Onofrio. Yay, great job. I saw this guy and I was like, I know you. And you guys have heard me talk about in previous reviews. Does it not drive you crazy when you're like, I know exactly that, like, I've seen that person before, I know who that is, I just can't think of their name, or what else have they done? This is a guy that has been on one of the Law and Order spinoffs for ages and ages and ages. And yeah, I mean, when he was young, man, he was working it. Colleen Dewhurst, great job. I recognized her instantly because I was a huge fan of the Anne of Green Gables series with Megan Follows in it when I was little, and of course she played the mother of Megan Follows of Anne of Green Gables, so I was like, oh, Colleen Dewhurst, and you know, she's actually Campbell Scott's mother in real life. Yeah, did not know that until I was like looking at my computer up the trivia, and I was like, really? She doesn't play his mother in this film, but I had no clue about that at all. I think this was like her last film though, because she died in 91. I don't know what, bless her, but anyway, that's kind of random, I'm sorry. David Selby, good. George Martin, good. And, O.J. Johnson, I don't really remember. So, supporting cast on the whole was pretty good. Nothing great. And the supporting cast, like, on the whole didn't have, like, a lot of involvement. It was basically just Julia and Campbell. And the other real four that I mentioned, which are, well, yeah, Colleen, Vincent, Campbell, and Julia were the main four. So, yeah. I don't know, performances are pretty good on the whole, but Campbell Scott kind of let me down a little bit, just a little bit. Moving on to the directing, Joel Schumacher. I thought it was pretty good. I wish he could have pulled more out of Campbell Scott. I do. But, you know, you never know what's going down on sets and all that kind of stuff, and, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get into all that. I wish he could have pulled more out of Campbell Scott, because obviously he was able to either pull it out of Julia, or Julia just was like, here, I'm giving it to you whether you're pulling it out of me or not. So, you know, I thought the directing on the whole was pretty good. It could have been better. Yeah, it could have been better. But this is the same guy. This Joel Schumacher is the same guy that directed St. Elmo's Fire. He directed The Client, the 1994 movie, which I really, really like. Cinematography, good. On the whole, it was good. There were some really lovely shots. Editing, I hate to just, like, be like, you're at fault, because you never know, like, in films and stuff, how much control people actually get. Like, okay, say that you're the director. Well, you know, you don't know how much control the producers are having, and you don't know if you're writing, if you're editing the thing, then if you think that the film is weak because of this scene, you want to cut it, the writers may say, oh no, that's the most important scene, and it ruins the whole movie, but then it reflects that on you because you did the editing. I mean, so I'm reluctant to point fingers at anybody, and it's so vague, like the job descriptions for pretty much everything in film is really open. Like, people just do so much. So, anyway, editing I didn't think was that super, because I did not feel like enough stuff was cut out. I felt like there were, you know, some useless scenes and some useless dialogue, and could have sped it up, kept the pacing a lot more, just bam, bam, bam. And I wish they would have gone more into the sickness. And they may have done that in filming, and then either the editor edited out, or they just decided to take a new direction, or whatever. But I didn't really care for that. I'm saving the best for last, guys. James Newton Howard. Oh, my stars. Wrote the score for this. Do you see this? Do you see this? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna faint. Okay. This is so the worst. I am a huge James Newton Howard fan. Hey, huge, okay? And if you've seen my previous review of The Village from 2004, man, you'll know that I love James Newton Howard. So for those of you who regularly watch my reviews, you're like, okay, we know, move on. Okay, well, I'm moving on. I've just got to take a minute to rave on him. This is one of my favorite scores of all time. No. Yes, it is. And I know, no, wait, stop before you, like, completely rule me out as a critic on the whole, because I know that, like, it's no Star Wars, and it's no, Indiana Jones and all that kind of stuff, but y'all, it's so gorgeous. I mean, I listened to this, one particular, which I would listen to the whole thing. I mean, the whole thing is gorgeous, and I fell in love with the soundtrack way before I ever saw the movie. Way. Like, I saw the movie, like, not that long ago at all. And I've been listening to the soundtrack for over, like, 2 years. It's ridiculous. There's this one particular, like, song set thing from that movie. It's called I'll Never Leave You, and it literally just melts me. I have no words for that. That's so epic. And I don't know, that was, like, literally Julia and dear old James Newton were my reasons to see this movie. No lie. Like, and if Julia hadn't even been in it, I still would have wanted to see it, because this is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, as I've said, and the whole thing is gorgeous. The entire soundtrack is so gorgeous. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. It's nothing like really majestic. It's just so gorgeous. I don't know, I love it. And is it one of the best soundtracks of all time? No, but it's like one of my favorites. Like, it's in my top 10. So, yeah. I can't say enough good things about James Newton Howard. I love him to death. I do. So, if you watch this movie for no other reason than the soundtrack, I would say listen to the soundtrack, like, apart from the movie, because the soundtrack is way better than the movie. Like, please do not, like, watch this movie and then think that it wasn't any good because of the movie. Like, the soundtrack is so much better, especially by itself. Like I said, I fell in love with the soundtrack way before I'd even, like, I was like, what movie did this come from? Like, I heard it, and I was like, well, I don't even know what this came from, and I already love it. So, yeah, separate the two, I felt like he crushed it, and I felt like that his score was so much above everything else in this film. It was just like it was ridiculous. It's like, wow, this should not be, if you're scoring a movie like this, like, I hope they're paying you a fortune, and this soundtrack should not belong with, like, a little movie like this. It should go with, like, a huge epic movie. Yeah, obviously, I'm assuming that Julia Roberts is a fan of his scores, too, because he also scored Pretty Woman, which she was in the year before. In total summary of all of that, I love James Newton Howard to death. This is one of my favorite scores of all time, and if you've never heard it, go listen to it. I wouldn't say get the movie just to hear it, because honestly, the soundtrack is a lot better without the movie. So let's jump into this parent's guide now. Language for this film, not the best. Sexual content, not the worst, but not the best. What am I talking about? Specifics, you say. Specifics are like all I want when I'm talking parent's guide. Alright. Here's what we got, okay? We got 16 F's, we got no B's, we got 3 D's, we got 2 H's, 5 S's, 2 A's, and 4 GD's. Alright. Knowledge is power. Alright. I'm skipping the drug and alcohol content right now. Lots of smoking. Puff, puff, puff away. It's all like nicotine, though, I'm pretty sure. No, I'm kidding. It's all nicotine, so, anyway, there's some drinking. They go to a bar a couple times, and there's pretty good alcohol consumption, and, like, a couple of the characters get drunk, so, yeah, there's definitely booze involved. Violence and gore, lots of, like, vomiting and that kind, well, not lots, like, the first part of the film has, like, a pretty good bit of, like, vomiting, because the guy's going through chemo. He gets shakes, he looks awful, he's, like, hallucinating, like, it's intense. But it didn't bother me. kind of stuff really doesn't bother me that much, but it's definitely present. Moving to sexual content, though, the whole purpose that Julia answers this one ad that this guy has placed is because she walks into her boyfriend, which you'll find this out in the first 10 minutes of the film, so I really don't consider it a spoiler. She walks into her boyfriend who is sleeping with another woman. Julia and Campbell go to like a bar, and Julia's dancing around in a tight skirt and like a bra, basically. Let's see, there's some sexual references. Campbell Scott's character is like really into art and paintings and stuff. There is like a ton of pictures of like paintings of like nude women. Watch out for that. Let's see. There is, and not really a spoiler because I think we all saw it coming, but there is sex scenes between the two main characters, but they're not really that, they're not that graphic. A little bit of skin, nothing, no nudity, like it wasn't ridiculous, and it was done well. There's some movies that you're just like, ugh, gross. Like, I'm fixing to like cough on my own tongue. Seriously. This was not that bad between the two mains, but you combine that with all the other sexual content, not for your like 10-year-old. I would say not. Plus all the language, plus all the smoking and drinking, plus all the dry heaving and all that stuff. I would say not under 13. I don't know, that's just me. Besides, who wants their kid to like sit there and hear about cancer and stuff? I mean, it's like a really somber film that's dealing with like a lot of life issues and stuff. So, I don't know. I'm picky. Anyway, alright guys, in summary, here are my special notes. There are some problems with this writing because there were a couple scenes that weren't believable. There was a couple lines that were cheesy. Of course, it's like romance and death. Everything is pretty much going to be cheesy. It's the 90s. It's the 90s, baby. But anyway, I did want to mention, though, that it's only a couple weeks into, like, after Campbell and Julia meet and she agrees to take this job, that Campbell's like, okay, like, I've just had my second chemo session, but I'm done, so I guess I really don't need your help for, like, a job anymore, but let's go on vacation. And I'm like, okay, let me get this right. She just got here 2 weeks ago. She helped you through 2 chemo sessions. You're like, that was all I needed you for. See ya. I'm like, either the writing in this is awful, or, or spoilers. So, there you go. Yeah, it turns out the writing is not awful. It was spoilers, but I'm not going to give anything away for those of you that still want to see this movie. And hear James Newton Howard's divine soundtrack. Oh, swoon. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I thought that was kind of weird. A couple things like that in this movie that you're like, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, There was filler things, and I'm like, and can I just say, and you guys tell me if you agree, if you've got a movie, okay, that, if you think, like, certain scenes are weak and stuff, cut them. It doesn't matter if the film is, like, only an hour and 15 minutes long, okay? If you've got bad scenes, don't just leave them in to make the film longer. Or replace the bad scenes with, like, something better, or just cut them, I mean, I know it's so hard because, like, I write and stuff like that, and, when somebody's like, I don't think this is that good, you should exit, I'm like, no, like, and I think it's good, but, like, in reality it's not. So, there again, you've got that dear old pal that needs to come over and say, hey, pal, cut it for your own, reputation, safety, general mental health, all this kind of stuff. But, so yeah, other than that, though, it was okay. If I had to give this one a rating, oh boy, minus the soundtrack, because, I mean, the soundtrack is 10 out of 10 for me. Let's completely axe the soundtrack, which does not improve the movie that much because for me it's like almost like two different worlds. It's like I'm listening to the soundtrack, like I'm looking away, and then I watch the movie and then I tune out the soundtrack because I'm trying to like keep them separate because they're on, so like the soundtrack's up here, the movie's down here. So there you go. Minus the soundtrack, just focusing on the film alone, Julia was good. She wasn't her best, but she was good. So, and then again, the role wasn't super great, and the dialogue wasn't either. So, I'm gonna give this one probably 2.5 stars out of 5. But since the movie is about Campbell Scott, the ill young man, and I did not feel like he really delivered, that just kind of drops everything, and plus the editing, plus the writing, gives it about 2.5. So, yeah, watch this one again. No, guys, I don't think I would. I think I'd rather just go to YouTube and hear James Newton's glorious soundtrack, separate from this movie. And I don't know, I like Julia in it, but there's so many other good Julia films besides this one that it's like, why would you watch this one if you had a choice to watch like any other Julia films? You know what I'm saying? So, obviously the Julia fans will want to see this one. You should. She was good in it, and she was young in it too. So, great for her. But yeah, don't expect it to be really a favorite. If it is your favorite movie, if you love this movie, great. That's so great. And I hope you love the soundtrack too, because I'm in love with the soundtrack, y'all. Alright, raved enough about that. Get over James Newton Howard. Alright, wrapping this up, guys. I'm so glad that you have watched my review of the 1991 film Dying Young. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys later, and please subscribe.